Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a video that I just want to talk about a couple things. One is a response to the people that have constantly been talking to me over and over again on the comments and doing inkar on some of my recitation. And it's also apology for some of the mistakes in some of my recitations that I have on previous videos, specifically over a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. One is the original video that I put up on my channel here that got me a lot of traction at the very beginning of my YouTube endeavors was basically my journey to Islam. And that's up there and it's got like 70,000 views or something. And at the beginning of this, I wanted to have like an intro that encapsulated the essence of what I want for the message of this YouTube channel. And so I used I used the ayah فَلِذَلِكَ فَدْعُوا وَاسْتَقِيمْ كَمَا أُمِرْتَ. And so I used this and I immediately got extreme backlash from a bunch of people talking about you can't sing the Quran. And so I asked them, like, first off, like singing the Quran, this is something that is the Prophet ﷺ, he uses this word when he says, "Man lam yataghanna bil Qur'ani falaysa minna." Like the person who doesn't do taghanni of the Quran, أو كما قال, the person who doesn't do taghanni of the Quran, meaning he doesn't sing the Quran, this is the apparent Arabic meaning, that he's not from us. And then when you look at the scholars, what did they mention of this? Like beautifying the voice. Beautifying the voice in this, and you won't find a sahih hadith that will say that you're not allowed to recite with beautifying the voice. And also, there's a hadith that some people brought up that don't recite with the alhan al-ajim, like the alhan, which is like the modes or the melodies of the people who are not Arabs. Ajim is the people who are Ajami, someone who is not Arabic. But this hadith is munkar, as many of the scholars of hadith have looked at, and they said the hadith itself is munkar. It doesn't have any sahih chain for it. This is the closest thing I could get from evidence from anyone to tell me that you can't recite with a melody that isn't Arabic, so particularly Arabic. So they basically said you can't. You can't sing the Quran, and this is terrible. A'udhu billah. And there's a level of inkar that comes up on the comment sections from this video, and I had it on other videos at the beginning, not realizing the response that there would be. Is there a mistake in the actual recitation? Yes, there's a mistake that I was trying to get people to pinpoint where's the mistake. And people would just say, "Oh, you're singing the Quran." This is not the mistake. This is something that, if there's a mistake in it, point to the mistake. But singing the Quran, this is the area of valid difference of opinion, at least. And there should be no unkar in these areas of difference. If it is even that. And of course, like the difference is basically, are you allowed to use maqamat when you're singing? I don't even know what maqamat are. Like I didn't learn the maqamat that people talk about, these maqamat. Although I was a musician for, was it 20 plus years, like 25 years, or like 20 plus years, yeah. And so I was exposed to a lot of scales and a lot of blues, gospel music, classical, jazz, rock, all these things. I was exposed to a lot of musical theory, and I learned a lot way back in the day. But okay, so I become Muslim. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just like turn off my heart, when I'm reciting? Or do I just learn how to recite properly with tajweed? And then whatever comes out naturally comes out. And whether this is on some scale or it's not on a different scale or whatever, I'm not focusing on this. And I'm not trying to recite with this. This is just something that naturally would happen. And so is this something that's blameworthy, me of using maqamat? Am I using the maqamat if I'm not consciously thinking about anything? I'm not thinking about whether it's a major scale, a minor scale, and if I'm borrowing notes or whatever, or if I'm changing keys from one thing to another. Like if I was constantly thinking about this, then you could probably say something about it. But just the fact that someone uses a maqama doesn't necessarily mean that this person is someone who is subjecting the Quran to some type of filth and whatnot. And using the maqamat, this is an issue that Sheikh Al-Ma'surawi, he mentions this, and he has a fatawa where he sits down with someone who's using the maqamat, and he basically says that as long as the person is using tajweed properly, they're reciting with tajweed properly, then if they use the maqamat, then there's no problem with this. This is his view. Also, same as Yahya and Dr. Yahya al-Ghawthani, he also has a big talk about this, and he actually looks into the issue very well. He has bahth in this in his book Ilm al-Tajweed, and also he has another book on Mufassal in this. where he goes into these issues in greater detail and actually brings up the evidence and the adilla and what people have to say about this. But basically, like these maqamats, these are something that people will fall into naturally, whether or not they realize it. And for the most part, if someone falls into this, there's no problem with that. Does someone need to learn it? No. But if they learned it, is it necessarily haram? Not necessarily, as long as they're using the rules of tajweed and they're not missing any rules of tajweed. If they are putting the rules of tajweed on the back burner and then they're just using whatever scales they want to use so that for the sake of this, then in this case it would be haram for them to ignore the rules of tajweed. Ignore the rules of tajweed so that they can get a sound or a certain taste across and whatnot. But if someone is using the rules of tajweed, then this is not a problem. And this goes back to also a fatwa of Ibn Taymiyyah. He also talks about this in a fatwa where he talks about the people who are reciting with maqamat and whatnot. If they are going against the rules of tajweed and they're not applying them properly, then in this case, this would be haram. But as far as like if they're using the rules of tajweed, then the majority of the scholars are fine as long as you're doing tajweed. So if your inkar is going to come across this, then point to the issue in tajweed. There is an issue in tajweed that finally someone actually was able to point out and be very clear about it with it, which I heard recently. And I actually stopped posting that clip, like the clip that I had before. I stopped posting it as soon as I got all that backlash, because I don't want it to be a cause of hindering dawah, and it's not even necessary. You don't need to have an intro like that. So I just dropped it on all of the upcoming videos. That was like I think it was like over 2 years ago and whatnot. After a couple of brothers had said things to me that there's issues. But they weren't very clear about it. But the issue that is in it is there's ikhtilas. Ikhtilas is eating half of the harakah, or like eating half of the letter that should be there. And so when somebody eats half of the letter, then this is what's called ikhtilas, which like linguistically means like stealing or taking from something, like very subtly. And so in this case, there was some of this and some of the harakats in that, which is an actual mistake. And I think the brother that gave me awareness to the mistakes that were in that. As far as like the videos on YouTube, like it's very difficult to go back and like you can't just erase an introduction to a video or an like the outro to a video. You can't just do this on YouTube. You have to go erase the whole video and then go edit it again and then repost it. And so like all the comments and whatnot, they'd all be lost and whatnot. And this is not an issue, like the ikhtilas is not an issue that's a major issue. It is an issue. Yeah, it's an issue. It's a minor lahan. It's like a lahan that's minor. It doesn't change. It's not a lahan jali. It's not something that changes the meaning of anything, but it is a lahan. And so like in this case, I wouldn't want to post anything further of this. And I do have this video to apologize for posting something before being absolutely certain that it wasn't, that there was nothing incorrect about it. So if somebody's going to talk about the issue of singing, though, in and of itself, is this something that's haram for someone to sing the Quran? As long as they are holding on to the rules of tajweed, then it's not haram for them. And also, if someone is new and they haven't learned the rules of tajweed well, then they should not post their videos of them reciting improperly or like their recordings of this on YouTube or the other things. And this is something I didn't realize I was falling into this, but over time, eventually you learn. And you see that there's problems with the way that you didn't even know about. Like there's problems about my recitation that some of my teachers, they wouldn't go into that level of detail to point out, oh, this is an issue. And some of my teachers I have been working with in the last year or so, they have pointed out some areas of ikhtilas that will happen from here and there, and they'll point at this. But for the most part, I've recited to a lot of different teachers, and none of them have issues with the melody itself. Like the melody itself, this is not the issue. The issue is, are you reciting all of the things with tajweed properly, and are you pronouncing it properly and whatnot? And this is the major thing that someone would look at. So as long as if someone was to use maqamat and whatnot from the fatwa and the understanding that Sheikh Yahya al-Ghuthani, that he brings up in his book, he says basically, if somebody is going to disregard rules of tajweed so that they can get a certain maqam or they can get a certain melody out and whatnot, this is haram. But if they're applying tajweed properly and they're making sure that they apply it, then this is something that's permissible, like mubah. And as long as this melody that they're using is not the melody of a song, and it's not the melody of a particular song. If it is the melody of a particular song that's known to be from the fusaq and whatnot, then this is haram. This is haram in this case, and the Quran shouldn't be exposed to this type of recitation and whatnot. But if it's just regularly, it falls under some of the scales that are out there that are known in music. This is inevitable for the most part. It's inevitable that it's going to fall under some type of scale. If it didn't fall under some type of scale, it's going to be nasty to listen to. To be honest, it's not going to be something that's pleasing. If somebody was like monotone, or they're just reciting without any type of bass whatsoever, like musically, then it's going to be hard. And Ibn al-Qayyim, he talks about this. He doesn't prefer for maqamat to be used, but rather he says the person should just naturally recite from what's naturally inside of him. And this is what I hold, like that someone shouldn't go out there and go learn maqamat, and they shouldn't try to consciously think about, oh, am I doing this? I don't know, rest or whatever. They have different names for maqamat. I don't learn these things. But for someone to try to consciously use these maqamat while he is reciting, then this is generally not advised, because of the way that it will take someone's attention span off of the Quran from learning it and pondering the meanings of it, and they'll be too focused on making sure that they give their maqam its due right, as opposed to making sure that the Quran is explained properly with the recitation of the individual. So, of course, the individual should recite properly from his heart, make sure he's applying the rules of tajweed, and then also just reciting from what's natural for him to recite. And me, I have a background of music, so without a doubt, like this is going to seep through. This is going to seep through, and for me to someone say, okay, you need to change to be a Arab reciter. Now you're telling me to learn maqamat. I don't learn maqamat. This is also like this is the thing that we're not supposed to do. We're not supposed to go learn maqamat. So am I supposed to just go out and go change myself from a gospel, blues, and jazz rock background, and then all of a sudden turn Arab one day? Like this is a thing that's very different. Even some of the ways that a lot of the other reciters recite with, like some of their maqamats and whatnot, the scales that they will use, a lot of them aren't even Arab in nature. Some of them are actually Farisi, and there are other cultures. And so, if you have a problem with like the different ways that people recite, then you point back at something that's tajweed, and then you can point at this. And this is just a last thing: is like the Haram police. I love you guys, and I hope that you do your due diligence to realize where is a point that you should do inkar and what is a point that you shouldn't. And if you are going to do inkar and it's about something that is a minor issue, or it's an issue that has it takes a bit of knowledge to understand what exactly is the issue with it, then you shouldn't be doing inkar unless you are a specialist in that field. If you're a specialist in that field, then you can do inkar and you can point to the issue that's there. But if you're not and you just say haram, 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 and you just make a bunch of noise, this doesn't help. Like, it didn't help me find out if there's an issue with my recitation just because people were saying, oh, you can't sing the Quran. Did this help me? Did this help me? What am I supposed to do now? I just feel like that I can either recite the Quran monotone, and then I'll make everybody happy, or I don't recite the Quran at all. You know, but I can't recite it from my heart. Okay, like this is a thing that didn't help. But when somebody is knowledgeable, and then they can point to the issue and say, oh, this, that, and the other, these are the things you need to look at, and this is a mistake. Okay, that helps. You know, and of course, there's a difference between a mistake and something that's intentional out there. And of course, I'm not. There's a lot of reciters out there these days that actually do have. They do like a singing of the Quran, and some of them actually do mimic. They will mimic actual EDM tracks that are out there, and this is haram without a doubt. Like, you're mimicking a what do they call it? You're mimicking an actual line, or like an actual melody that comes from an EDM track that's out there. Like, this is haram. And that's where you'll find like someone who writes Qaf fearless. Like, what's fearless here in Qaf? You should have lots of fear of Allah when you're reciting Surah to Qaf. And so and then if you look up what is he talking about by fearless, you'll find it's EDM track, and there's the actual line that he's doing that's in EDM that now he's putting in the Quran. Okay, this is the issue that I mentioned back in the hadith, or not in the hadith, but in the fatwa. I mentioned in the fatwa that if you're actually mimicking a song, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to mimic a song, and you need to be applying the actual rules of tajweed in that. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. And of course, there's specialists in this field that are much more qualified to look into the details of this than myself. And I study it as a student of knowledge, and I love tajweed and love studying it and whatnot. But for the most part, I'm not going to be recording or reciting or putting anything up unless I've had it approved in the future, just because I don't want to fall into any mistakes that I don't know about or that other people don't know about, and then have it come back to be something that would affect the da'wah of other things that are, of course, agreed upon and whatnot. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.